All right, welcome everyone to the State of the Bird for the fourth quarter of 2021. The reason it's for the fourth quarter is because that's the time we'll be going over. Our subtitle this quarter is "Oh So Tired" because wow, we've been busy. I was hoping to get some metrics into this State of the Bird to give you guys a better idea of like what's going on. But I ran out of time. Again, oh so tired. So anyways, welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know, the State of the Bird is a presentation to explain what's been going on in the project. As many of you know, Pidgin 3's development has been going on for the better part of 14 years now. And trying to convey what's actually going on with it, where it stands and so forth is very difficult. So a while ago, we decided that we were going to do this quarterly to just try to give everyone a synopsis of what's going on, what's happening, and that kind of stuff. And it's an interactive presentation for the rest of the community because during this presentation, as you can see underneath the slides here, you can type !ask in the chat with your question. And once I get through the presentation, I'll go ahead and answer any of those questions. So you can go, the queuing for the questions is already open. So by all means, if you have a question you want me to answer, feel free to add it now. So, all right, let's get back there. Let's get into this. So retrospective, what happened in the past 3 months? So our last Day of the Bird was October 14th. And our next one is tentatively scheduled for April 4th. Notice these are always on Thursdays. For those of you that don't know the relevance of Thursdays to the Pidgin project, way back when we used to release on Thursdays. So that's one of the reasons why on my stream, Thursdays is Pidgin night and why the State of the Bird is always on a Thursday. Because back when everybody was in college, Thursdays, or release would go out Thursday, and then people go out and party because Thursday. At least I think that's it. I don't know. I wasn't a partier in college, so I don't know. But I believe that's what everybody did. All right. Anyways, so our infrastructure, unfortunately, our email is still running at Wictel. I got really close on getting it done. I ran out of time. So the only thing I know that remains that needs to be done is to finish transitioning everything to Mailman 3. We had a couple hiccups with that. I couldn't figure, or I had to write a plugin to get our single sign-on to work with Mailman 3, and then I had to resize the virtual machine because we were getting killed and so on and so forth. It kind of sucked. But we're close. I've got a bunch of stuff that's a little bit ahead of it in the pipeline right now. So I'm probably not gonna, well, I'm most definitely not gonna get it finished in January. But I'm hoping to get it done in February because, like I said, last State of the Bird, I really need this thing off my plate. It needs to go away. It's been looming for over a year now, and it's just like, yep, I know, except it's really, really annoying work, and there's so much writing on it that sucks. So that's why it's like, if I don't have to touch it, yeah. But yeah. All right, so aside from that, we looked at Weblate a little bit more. Weblate, for those of you that aren't aware, it is an online collaboration tool for translations. Currently for Pidgin 2, we are using Transifex, but we want to move off of Transifex for a number of reasons. The biggest one is there was such a lull in our development, and there's such a big difference between Pidgin 2 and Pidgin 3 that we don't really know our translators anymore. There's nothing, I mean, that's not to say there's anything good or bad, but like there should be at least some level of trust there, right? Because I obviously cannot read and write any of the well, I was going to say more than one of these languages, but any of the languages that Pidgin gets translated into. So like we need to be careful that people aren't putting malicious messages and stuff like that in there. So we've been looking at using Weblate and hosting it ourselves. We've gotten most of the work done, but we ran into a problem with the SSO again. Again, we're trying to get everything into our single sign-on. That's what SSO stands for, single sign-on. So that people don't have to have a million different passwords to interact with us, because that's just a way to get people to not interact with us, right? But we looked into this late last week, actually this week, even earlier this week. And it turns out that they are supposed to have OpenID Connect support, so it should work, but I gotta dig into it and see what's going on. So yeah. Aside from that, we a contributor added Ansible support for installing our TeamCity agents on Windows. And I've kind of dropped the ball here. I haven't actually started using it yet. So that's something we need to address soon, and our Windows build agents are kind of messed up anyways. So that's something we'll be doing in the near future to actually get those deployed on Windows. So yeah, that covers the infrastructure. So when it comes to Pidgin 2, we released 2.14.8 on October 14th of 2021, which, if you were paying attention, that was the last State of the Bird. Because usually at the State of the Bird, we announce a Pidgin 2 release, but this time, no release. Right now, we only have one change queued up in Pidgin 2, and it fixes a broken unit test. So there's no reason to release it right now. I do want to get the spell check dictionary stuff done. We did a bunch of work on that a while ago to fix it for the installer, but we haven't actually fully integrated it yet. But we built a tool that will go and update a package for us that we can pull into the installer. So the thing that needs to be done is we need to update the NSYS stuff to pull it into the installer and make it work. So there will be a 2.14.9 at some point when I don't know. Because it's similar to the unit test thing. The spell check dictionaries only affect Windows. I don't want to cause everybody to go and update when just Windows needs to update, right? I'm not entirely opposed to it, but it seems like we should find something else to get in there, that kind of stuff, right? And right now I'm not sure of anything like pressing that needs to go into Pidgin 2. But we'll see, right? All right, it's Pidgin 3. This is a big slide with a lot of words. I apologize, but it's the only slide covering on stuff that's happened in Pidgin 3 in the past 3 months. So, these are pretty much in reverse chronological order. That means that the things that happened first after the last State of the Bird is at the top, and the things that just happened are at the bottom. So, yeah. All right, so let's just jump in right away here, right? So we converted the debug API to using the glib structured logging, and our intent is to get rid of the debug API altogether. For those of you that don't know, the debug API, like if you've ever gone into Pidgin, you've gone to the help debug window. That is displaying the output from the purple debug API. Now, what I mean by we converted the debug API to use a glib structured logging is the debug API, instead of writing to the way it used to, it now just uses glib structured logging stuff. The glib structured logging stuff is just built into glib, and it works with a bunch of stuff, and it's one interface for us to deal with instead of us having our own custom API and then still pulling in the glib logging. Because that's what we were doing before. On top of this, the extra benefit is that all libraries that use the glib structured logging will now also appear in the about box or in the debug dialog and all of that as well. The only caveat here is there's a ton of stuff that uses the debug API, which is why we haven't removed it yet, because it's going to take us time to get through all of it. And there's nothing pressing to do it right now. So it's just, as you know, as we write new code, we're using glib message, gmessage, gwarning, and friends, rather than using purple debug misc, purple debug warning, etc. Right? So yeah. All right. We also removed the purple log API because we landed the purple history API. The purple history API was a summer code project from 2021. It still needs some work, but it's functional. We need to do more tests with it and figure out exactly other use cases. But everything's there and it works. So we removed the existing purple log API. What that means right now is there's no support for reading older logs. And things are probably going to stay that way, which, before everybody gets in a tizzy about that, is the intent is that the logging API will be able to, that we have a command line utility. It already exists. It's called Purple History. And Purple History will be able to read your old logs and then bring them into the current logging format. The reason we want to do it that way is it's not really beneficial to keep all of that code in the running process, right? So previously, like if you wanted your old logs, they stayed in their old format on disk, and we just had a plugin that would go through and read them. Well, there's a number of issues with that, especially when it comes to the history stuff. The history stuff is supposed to be searchable, it's supposed to be indexable, and so on, right? The old logging API can't do those things. You can search it and you can display it in blocks, but you can't index it, and it's going to be slow because, like, if you use the really old logging, you have like a year's worth of history or more in a single file. So if you want to get like the middle month of that year, yeah, it's going to take a while, right? So the other intent there is that the Purple History API will read your old logs, convert them into the new format, and store them, which is indexable, searchable, everything, right? And then you still have your old logs that are on disk, right? But we're not like going to interfere with the runtime of the process or anything like that, because it doesn't need it, right? Everything's using the new SQL. Well, the default is SQLite based, but it could be any database if you want, because that's the history API is abstracted and you can write plugins for it and stuff like that. So yeah. All right, moving on. QLogic spent a bunch of time building out new GTK4 widgets for gplugin. If you remember correctly, one of our focuses from the last State of the Bird was that we had decided we were going to move to GTK4, and we had to figure out a path forward for it. Well, before we can consider moving Pidgin to GTK4 itself, our libraries that our out of tree libraries need to be updated as well. So gplugin, for example, right now the Pidgin 3 dialog box is just I just realized something dumb I forgot to do before the presentation. Anyways, the GTK4 or the gplugin, the plugin dialog box in Pidgin 3 right now is just a widget that gplugin provides. So what we did is to start dipping our toes into GTK4 and stuff like that, QLogic went through and rebuilt those widgets in GTK4 in the gplugin project. So gplugin itself now can build both widgets for GTK3 and GTK4. And those are, I believe, all done. There's a few little things that need to be sorted out and addressed yet, but there's nothing that should be stopping them from being integrated whenever we want to flip that switch for Pidgin, right? So that's a good thing. We have also started converting Talkatoo to GTK4. Talkatoo is a library we wrote to. We started writing Talkatoo because we needed a new widget for our input and history in the conversation, right? Your input is where you type, your history is where you see the channel backlog, whatever you want to call it. The problem there, this is a long thing we've talked about many times. I don't think we've talked about it on the State of the Bird. But early on in Pidgin 3's development, we had moved the conversation widgets to be WebKit web views. And the reason, one of the main driving factors for that was so that we could support ADM conversation themes. And that was fine, and that stuff mostly worked. It was only in the development tree for a long time. But then WebKit became a problem. WebKit 1 got deprecated, which is what we were using, and WebKit 2 was the way that everybody was supposed to go, because that's just the way things happen with libraries, right? However, there was a problem. The problem is that WebKit 2 did not have an official port on Windows because Apple no longer supports Safari on Windows, and Safari is the only browser that uses WebKit proper. And you're probably going, well, what about Chrome? Chrome was based on WebKit, and you're not wrong. You're just out of date. Many years ago now, Google actually forked WebKit and created a new rendering engine based off of WebKit called Blink. And they do have a library called Chromium Embedded Framework. But the problem with that is, at least for our purposes, is it's not actually in any Linux distributions. So you have to vendor a binary, which is the same thing we'd have to do on Windows and Mac as well. But the problem is that binary is like 150 megs. And at last check, even with GTK, we're only around, at last check, Pidgin 2 on Windows with GTK is like 12 megs. So do we want to increase our size tenfold to have a web rendering engine? Not really. So after a lot of deliberation, we decided that we were going to rebuild our old GTK IM HTML widgets, which are the ones that are in Pidgin 2. But we're going to do it in a more modular fashion, and we're going to do it out of tree so we could test it easily without having to pull in all of the stuff that Pidgin 2 has, or that Pidgin 3 and all that has. And that's what evolved into Talkatoo. And then that became Talkatoo, and Talkatoo then evolved into just covering a bunch of different widgets for us. So Talkatoo right now has an input widget and a history widget. It also has a typing widget. The typing widget is just a real simple widget that displays who's typing. And it does that by you just tell it when someone's typing and when somebody stops, and then it manages itself. Previously in Pidgin 2 and Pidgin 3, we manually handle that in all sorts of ways that are annoying. So having a widget where we can just like, person started typing, person stopped typing, and then it just updates itself, and it times, and if a person's been in there more than 30 seconds, it gets rid of them, makes things so much easier. Trying to think what else is in there. We also added support for rendering Markdown and HTML into GTK text views as well in there. There's a couple other ancillary widgets I can't think of right now, but that's what Talkatoo is. So we created a GTK4 branch on Talkatoo because Talkatoo, it's not like Gplugin where it's just like one small portion of it need to be converted. Talkatoo is going to have to be a whole thing. And so we started a new long-term branch on it called GTK4, which currently does not build. That's understandable. That's because we can't do this in one like fell swoop with a single pull request. So the first pull request was to convert GTK3 or to move our dependency from GTK3 to GTK4, which caused tons of build errors. And then we also had to remove gspell. Gspell replaces GTK spell for the spell checking stuff. Or gspell replaced GTK spell in GTK3 for spell checking. Gspell is not ported yet to GTK4, and they're still figuring out exactly how spell checking is going to work in GTK4. That's a little concerning, but we're still months out from a release of Pidgin 3, so it's not really a concern right now. We'll get it figured out by then. If we have to ship without spell checking for Pidgin 3, we ship without spell checking. It'll be annoying and people complain, but we'll have Pidgin 3. So at least that's where I'll be happy, right? One second. So after that, a while ago, we cleaned, many years ago, we had a summer code project called Master Password, whose intent was to give us a password manager-like experience in Pidgin. That slowly grew out into the Keychain API, which last year before, I don't remember. I cleaned up, reorganized it a bit, and renamed it as the Credential API. The Credential API consists of a credential manager, which is what pretty much everything interacts with. And then the credential manager handles credentials via credential providers. So we currently have credential providers for LibSecret and K-Wallet and the Windows Credential Store. But in the past 3 months, we also added support for the macOS keychain access. For those who don't know, Pidgin 3 is targeting macOS as a native first-party target, right? We will be releasing a Mac image or DMG, then Pidgin 3 will work. There's also a pull request that's going to make that that's in review right now. That'll make things even feel more native on Mac, but we're getting there, right? So yeah, so now you can use the keychain access. I don't think I put it in here. Oh no, we did. I should have plopped it up there. But we also removed the internal credential provider. The internal credential provider was originally written to store passwords locally. So for those of you that know the drama of our passwords, we used to store passwords in plain text in the file accounts.xml. The internal keychain, internal keychain, which we hadn't ported it to the credential provider API, and we were debating on doing that and how it would work and stuff like that. Ultimately, we decided not to port it because people have been angry with us for so long because of our stance on the password stuff, that it seemed to make more sense to me now to just not port it, right? And then one of the biggest reasons for that is we're not crypto experts, right? This isn't something we do every day. It's not something we do every week or every month, right? We go through the crypto dance when we need to. But what I'm suggesting here is if we were to implement an internal credential provider, we could get it right, but we're more likely going to get it wrong, right? And the last thing we want to do is give users a false sense of trust and, have that fall through, right? And then somebody breaks into their computer, steals their keychain, and even though it was encrypted because we thought it was right, we missed something silly and it's very trivial to crack, right? We don't want to deal with that. So in that interest, we decided to just ditch the internal credential provider. Now, that doesn't mean we can't add one back later. It's not something we're going to look at doing right now, right? So the credential API is completely pluggable. You can write your own credential provider. Like I said, we already have LibSecret, K-Wallet, Windows credentials. I swear there's another one, but whatever. And then now we have the macOS keychain access, right? So we've got the main credential providers on all of our target platforms right now, but there's no reason why you couldn't write one that connects to Bitwarden, right? Or something like that. And that's something we expect to see happen in the future. But like I said, in the meantime, we're just passwords. We're going to depend on a third party password or credential manager for that right now. The one use case this potentially breaks is Pidgin Portable. But that said, if you're portable, you may not be storing logs because you just want the portable version to be able to talk to somebody. So you probably don't want to store passwords either, right? So that it's a balance, right? We'll figure it out where we get there, but right now we're not going to do that right now. So yeah. Aside from that, we moved all of the conversation management to the new purple conversation window. So this one needs a bit more explaining too. So one of our goals from the last day of the bird was to continue modularizing the conversation window. And what that means is GTK Conf a couple of years ago now was over 10 or 12,000 lines of code. I don't remember. And there's lots of stuff just, mixed together in that file, and it was impossible to find anything and fix anything or to, figure out what was dead code or what wasn't necessary anymore, so on and so forth, right? So what we've been doing is we've been slowly pulling each one of those pieces apart and moving it to a new home, which is pretty much singled out and leaves it by itself. So one of the things we did a while ago was we took the actual window widget and we pulled that out of that file. But when we did that, we left all the conversation management in the file. Now, the conversation management is the stuff where it's like when you start a new conversation or somebody sends you a message for the first time, we have to open up that conversation and put it in a window. So that was still living in this big spaghetti mess file, right? But now what we've done is we have moved that over to the purple conversation window. So we changed the way that works. It's not really specific for any, or it doesn't really matter for any way that people want to look at it, or for that end users will care. But I hope we've made it easier on ourselves, but time will tell. But one of the big benefits of that is because the conversation window now keeps track of what conversation is active and so forth, we can now we were then able to actually move the menus. For those of you that have been following along on the streams, you'll know that the menus in the conversation window were generating a significant amount of compiler warnings because all of the menu API that we're using has been deprecated for a very long time. It was deprecated during GTK 2's lifetime. So yeah. And the conversation menu, I don't even know how many warnings it was. It was over 50, I think. It's like I used to have to increase the scroll back buffer history in my terminal just so I could get to the top of the compile so I could see the top of that file, the warnings from the top of that file when I would compile. And now that's just gone. We're down to like 5 deprecation warnings or something. I don't remember. It's very small. The progress alone in that is huge. So yeah, but we'll get to a little bit more of that, or we'll get a little bit more of that in a few minutes. But yeah. Aside from that, we have started migrating to libsoup 3. Us depending on libsoup is kind of new. Previously in Pidgin 3, was specifically Purple 3, we had an HTTP API that was used to go and get URLs and stuff like that, right? But we decided this is dumb. Why are we writing our own HTTP library? We should just use libsoup. It's already a dependency of one of our dependencies, so we should just pull it in. Like, it's already here. Why aren't we using it? However, progress never stops, right? And the libsoup developers have started working on libsoup 3. So libsoup 2 is very much an early glib2 based application. And what I mean by that is it doesn't use GIO at all. And if you all have any questions about what any of these projects are, by all means, feel free to ask, and I can explain in more detail. But so late on, or I shouldn't say late, somewhere around glib 2.30, keep in mind 2.70 or 2.72 might be out now. But somewhere around glib 2.30, they added a new sub library called GIO. And GIO takes care of a lot of your IO stuff, right? Your input output. How do you deal with network streams? How do you deal with files IO, and so on and so forth, right? So what libsoup 3 is doing is they're finally porting themselves from using older Unix socket and WinSocket stuff over to GSocket, and using over to GSocket, which is from GIO, and using streams from GIO as well, and just as stuff where it makes sense to move it to it, they're moving it to it, and that's what libsoup 3 is. So libsoup actually looks like they just released 3.0.4. So the fact that we're porting to it already shows our commitment to making sure that we are not going to be stuck in the rabbit hole that we have been going forward, or the rabbit hole of we're stuck in deprecation land forever, right? We're actively going, okay, this is where this is going, let's get there, right? So we don't have everything converted to it yet, and right now you have to manually turn it on as part of the build. But we do build against libsoup and libsoup 2 and libsoup 3 right now, or there's a way to at least attempt to go to libsoup 3. And QLogic's been the one that's been doing most of this work. But what's going on is that where our usage internally of libsoup we're starting to make it look like the libsoup 3 API, and then we have stubs that then convert it into the libsoup 2 API when we're compiling against libsoup 2. That way, when we actually finish libsoup 3, we can just delete the compatibility layer and we're done, right? So yeah. All right, so next up, there was an idea I had a while ago that we threw in the issue tracker as a summer code project idea, and that is for a demo protocol plugin. So the demo protocol plugin tackles a bunch of different use cases and scratches a bunch of different itches. One of the things I hear a lot from users, or potential users even, is you all need more screenshots. I agree. The problem is, all the screenshots you've seen of Pidgin, are the official ones, I should say, not from people that have actually just screenshotted their own stuff and maybe blurred it out or something. All of the ones you've seen from the Pidgin website or whatever, all of those are heavily doctored. And that's not good or bad. The doctoring is because we want to show specific things in specific ways, and we want to, put little Easter eggs in about the developers and stuff like that, right? And sometimes, or if we're using real accounts, sometimes people have status messages or protocol or avatars that are not appropriate for marketing material, right? Or to show an end user what something looks like, right? Or maybe, you know, it's a copywritten image, right? We can't show that, right? So one of the things the demo protocol plugin does is it fixes all those problems, right? So what we would do to manually doctor a screenshot to like change somebody's status message or their avatar or something, right? The demo protocol plugin just has that data statically, right? So you just create an account with a demo protocol plugin and bloop, there's the user with the status messages, right? Um, so that makes it much easier and much faster for screenshots. And on top of that, it means that anytime we take a screenshot, whenever we make a UI change and we're in review or whatever, we can load up the demo protocol plugin and we will always have the same content in the message. So you can actually focus on what changed in the UI or the UX and everything, right? And the actual content is the same, right? So you're actually comparing apples to apples then rather than apples to basketballs, right? I'm trying to find things that are, you know, very different, but yeah. So the demo protocol plugin, like I said, it'll be used for the screenshots, it'll be used for other demoing as well as screenshots and pull request and just, you know, marketing stuff. So lots of fun there. There's still a bit to do there, but it's functional now, which is very cool. So our last big thing that's happened is that we have moved the status box to the conversation window. So the status box is at the bottom of the buddy list. That's where it has been for a very, very, very long time. I think it was even there in game. I don't remember. I'd have to look at old screenshots. So we've moved it to the conversation window because the contact list or the buddy list window, it's going away. I know some people aren't going to be happy with that. I think I've addressed all their concerns in my plan, but we'll see how it goes, right? So one of the things to move us forward there is the status box had to move. So it's moved to the conversation window. Yeah. So next up, setbacks. Sorry, I'm a slide ahead of myself. So we haven't really seen any new big setbacks. Nothing major anyways. I am working roughly full-time on some contract work to keep myself afloat, which is a setback, but that was expected. We knew it was there and it was going to happen. So less time for me to work on Pidgin because I got to pay my bills, right? Aside from that, we still have some work to do with Google OSS Fuzz. This is leftover from last State of the Bird during all of the Zero Diem stuff. I really just need to pull request it, I think. I keep getting random emails that our build failed for random reasons. I don't know. I need to look at that and dig into it more. But I haven't put a whole lot of time into OSS Fuzz stuff because we fixed what it's found. And like Pidgin 3, so right now it's only fuzzing Pidgin 2. And Pidgin 2 hasn't changed much in a decade. Or we'll say a decade, right? So like I'm trying not to rock the boat there too much, right? And I'd rather focus our efforts on Pidgin 3 and getting that done and to a releasable state than working on or putting in effort that doesn't seem necessary in Pidgin 2. I'm not saying that, you know, like if OSS Fuzz finds a security issue, we're going to fix it, right? It's just no question. But like going through and fixing the random once a week build failure, it builds it multiple times a day or at least multiple times a week. But like once a week it fails to build for some reason, right? Like, is it worth investing that time when the next build runs fine? Right, it's debatable. So we still need to go through, we still need to finish that. It's been low priority is what it comes down to. And unfortunately, the final setback is I still don't have the TAM email done. Like I mentioned earlier, we're close. All that's really left is Mailman, I think, and then it's integration, testing, and conversion. The big issue with Mailman is Mailman that we're currently running is Mailman 2, and the new one is Mailman 3, and they rewrote Mailman. So it's not like just drop the list in and go. It's no, you have to do all this magic work to convert stuff and do this and that. and like their web interface changed from, I don't even know what it was called, but it was a pretty staticky site to a Django site. And then the archive site changed from something that was static again to another Django site. Nothing against Django, just, you know, there's additional configuration, there's additional resources, there's additional stuff I have to figure out to make it work, and that's where all this time is going. And then on top of that, the new archive site doesn't actually do any compatibility for the old archives. So I have to package up the old emailing archives and then set them up with a virtual host, or not a virtual host, but, you know, an alias directory in Apache, and point to the right thing. It's just, it's a ton of stupid stuff that needs to get done. So it takes a while. So yeah, that's why email is still not done. So, all right. What are our next steps? I do not remember where we were here at all. I should have looked at this earlier. I should have readjusted this, but it's fine. All right, our next steps are what we will be working on between now and the next Day of the Bird, which again is tentatively scheduled for April 4th. So we want to finish the convergence of the contact list and the conversation window. As I mentioned earlier, there's another step that's going to make Pidgin feel more at home on Mac. And that pull request is to use the menu bar. So that pull request removes the menu bar from our windows themselves, or so on desktop environments that support it, our windows will no longer have their menus at the top of the window. They will be at the top of the screen in the menu bar. That's Unity, Mac OS, and I thought there was another one, but I can't think of it right now. Oh, and the GNOME stuff, depending on if you're using the GNOME decorations or not. Or the client side decorations. So we're getting there on that stuff. But so that pull request, what it does is it temporarily creates the contact window will have two menus at the moment. We have the new menu, which looks exactly the same in the conversation window, because it is the same menu when you're running on Linux. That's how it'll look, or Windows for that matter right now. And the extra stuff that's there is stuff that's dynamic that needs to be converted after the first step lands. So it's just an iterative approach, because trying to do all of it at once would be a nightmare to review and land. So yeah. All right. After that, we are continuing to prepare for GTK 4. So we don't really have a solid GTK 4 plan yet. Because there's still, once we finish converging the conversation window, that'll free up a lot of the older stuff that does crappy things. The buddy list window is the buddy list and the conversation windows are some of the oldest code in Pidgin. And as you might imagine, they haven't been maintained well, and they do things in very old and weird ways. So when you're trying to jump an entire GTK version, well, not an entire, right? But, you know, they date back to GTK 1, right? They got ported to GTK 2, they got ported to GTK 3. Now as we're moving to GTK 4, there's stuff that's broke, right? So there's a lot of stuff we need to convert there yet, but we're slowly going through and figuring out which widgets need to be updated and move to stuff and go from there. One of the big things is GTK 4 really removed their, what do I want to call it, their bias for X windows. And they've taken more of a Wayland approach when it comes to their API, for their backend drawing API, which has caused some issues, right? So like all of the window events, like when a window gets resized or shown or hidden or a key is pressed or something like that, right? That was all dealing with the backend, with the windowing backend, right? So on Windows, that's GDI. On Mac, it's Quartz. On Linux, it's Wayland or X or maybe Mir, right? So all of that went from an X-centric, nice, from an X11 centric API to something that's closer to Wayland and the other display backends, right? So that really changed a lot of stuff when it comes to the widgets, but luckily, so they changed the way that works. They now have event controllers in GTK4, but they backported it in a pretty sane way. It's not going to work exactly during the conversion, but any window that is keeping track of its size or anything like that, those have to be ported to the backported API that was added in GTK 3.24. So a while ago, we updated our minimum GTK requirement to go from, I think we were 3.22 to 3.24, so we can get that backport stuff. And, you know, so as we're finding that stuff, we're starting to go and convert it and that kind of stuff. The fun part too, though, is we'll probably add this back at some point, maybe via a plugin or something. But we have very purposely been deleting all of the code that saves window sizes, because one of the main reasons for getting rid of it and moving it to a plugin, we haven't written the plugin yet, but the idea is that it'll be done in a plugin, is screens are a whole lot more dynamic now than they used to be, right? We've got people that have laptops that they connect to docks where they get extra screens. We have people with rotating screens and all this other stuff. And like just the old way we used to do things didn't necessarily make sense all the time. So we basically ripped that out because that also was code that needed to be converted for GTK 4. And we're going to tackle it when it becomes a necessity, right? And we'll go from there. So, yeah. All right. And our next up is we are finally, for real this time, going to get the email server to its new home on DigitalOcean. Like I said, the last remaining stuff is Mailman. I'm probably not going to get, I know I'm not going to get to it this month. I'm not going to finish it this month, but the goal is to have it done by the end of February, worst case March, or worst case is next State of the Bird, right? I don't foresee any big problems in blocking me there. It's just, I need to sit down and get it done. So, all right, now for something different. A demo, which I forgot to prepare for. So this is, let me do this real quick. Actually, this is fine. All right, so we are Pidgin clean build. All right, so I have everything already built. So one of the cool things about Pidgin 3 that I mentioned in the last, rule 0 of doing a live demo, do not do a live demo. It's fine. I just forgot to prepare it. So one of the things I mentioned in the last State of the Bird is Mason added a feature called dev environments, and dev environments are ridiculously cool. What we're doing, so the dev environment will let us run Pidgin 3 entirely from the build directory. So this is the normal clean checkout from https keep.imframe.org/pigeon/pigeon, right? And that's everything that's here. We can build, everything's there, and then we can just run it. So the first thing you're going to notice is by default, you get the conversation window. And the conversation window is very empty right now. I know, I understand. We'll get to that in a second. But so as you can see here, the status box is now here. So if we're going to change our status, you can say, you know, doing a dangerous demo. Boom, right? So the format bar sucks. I know. I'm debating deleting the format bar from Talkatoo. We'll see. But yeah, so this format bar, this widget, this send button, that's all a Talkatoo widget. And where that lands in the future, I don't know. We're going to play with it and figure it out. But so this is the new conversation window. I know it doesn't look like much, but if we jump back over to the contact list for a second, number one, you're going to see the demo protocol plugin in action. So this protocol icon is, for those that have no idea what this icon is, if you look at if you look right above me, right, you see the Pidgin logo up there? I noticed a long time ago on certain webs, or on if you did like a Google search for Pidgin, and you'd see images, you would see what you see on the icon here. And it took me a little bit to realize that what was happening was they were just cropping the image. And when they cropped the image, they just got the D and the G in Pidgin. And I was like, that's a good, like, abbreviated word mark. I'm going to use that. So we decided to use it for the demo protocol plugin here. But so the demo protocol plugin right now, all it really does is it sets people as uh, it's got whatever us five here online, set some status messages and our statuses, right? That's all it does right now. At some point, we're gonna add protocol, or we're gonna add avatars, and we'll have history that it'll show up. So when I open a conversation to myself, I'll have a history here. Right now we don't, but that's okay, right? So as we just go through, we can open all of these. And this is how the conversation list looks right now. You'll notice this is a GTK list view. And the intent is there's another pull request right now that actually puts these all under under a category of conversations. Because when we converge the contact list window into here, there's going to be another top level item called contacts. And when you click on that, you're going to see this, right? This part of the buddy list window will then appear on this pane, right? That's what's going to happen there. Now, one of the reasons we're going for a tree view here is because there's other fancy things that newer clients do and newer networks do that we need and should support. And that is stuff like favorite conversations or tabbed or starred or whatever you want to call them, right? So what we'll have is another category or, another top level tree item that is favorite, stars, pins, whatever, right? And then those conversations will all fit in there. And then that way you can just find them much easier. We can also add something that has, or we can also add another one that has recent or unreads or something like that, right? But having the tree view here instead of being a GTK notebook gives us all this power to do all these crazy things, right? Or gives us the ability to go ahead and do all these crazy things. On top of that, at some point we're going to be adding another option in here for mentions. So I don't know about you all, but when somebody mentions me, that highlights your username or says a word you're looking for to be highlighted or something, right? I personally can't stand having to go and dig back through the history because you know what happens every single time? I miss it. And then it takes me a while to realize I missed it. And then I start scrolling back down because I've gotten to stuff I already read, right? And then I start scrolling back down and I miss it again. And then I'm like, all right, well, what the hell, right? And then I eventually find it. So what we want to do is, this is a feature Slack has, and I think it's ingenious. And people have done it in the past for Pidgin plugins. Specifically, I think there was something for an IRC client I used to use way long time ago too. But what we're gonna do is we'll just have a list of the messages, and you will have the ability to click on the message where you got mentioned, and it'll drop you that message in that conversation. And that'll make things much easier. One of the other things Slack does that we will probably copy as well is, along with the mentions list, they add in reactions. So we're a long way away from message reactions yet, but so like say you write a message and nobody actually replies to it, nobody pings you on it or anything. The only way you find out if somebody reacted to it is if you go and look for it. And that is not ideal for all the same problems I described with the mentions, except for the case that you don't even know that they did it because there's no notification icon that somebody reacted to one of your posts. So what Slack does, and we will most likely do the same thing, is in the reaction list of the messages, we'll just show your message with the reactions, and then when a new reaction comes in, we just pop that up to the top of the list and go from there, right? But one of the other more fun things I want to do here is I want to make the conversation sorting stuff, the stuff that goes from starred, pinned, whatever, and unread and all that. I want to make that pluggable. Or I want to make that accessible to plugins so that plugins can come up with some crazy ideas. So one of the things I've been asking people was, as I've been trying to figure out how to do this convergence right, is what do you use the contact list window for? And many people go, well, I use it to see who's online, or I use it or I have it set to sort to people I talk to the most and stuff like that, right? Well, the people you talk to the most are easy, right? We'll just have an option to pin them or star them or favorite them or whatever, right? Even for protocols that don't support it, there's no reason we can't just track that internally in Pidgin, right? Just this conversation on IRC, yep, this person's a favorite, bubble it up to the top. But for the people that are looking for ones that are online or something, all right, fine. We can have a plugin that just, filters online DMs, right? Or online group messages. And a plugin should be able to do that very simply. And I'm realizing I'm skipping a step here too. So currently in Pidgin 3 and in all versions of Pidgin doesn't keep track of the state of your conversations between reboots, right? Or between instances, right? So if you close Pidgin and reopen it, it drops all your conversations. It's really annoying. It's like, how long have we had browsers that remember what tabs you had open when you reopened them? That's what Pidgin 3 needs to do. And in doing so, that'll make it, like you shouldn't need to use your contact list as much because the people you talk to all the time, as long as you leave the item in the list here, it'll be there, right? But if you want to go and create a new, you'll obviously be able to close it here. But if you wanted to go ahead and open one you haven't talked to from a while, you go select it from the conversation list or from the menu, new conversation, blah, blah, blah. It'll go load previous history, pull it up, and you're good to go, right? So that's just kind of some of the ideas that we're going for and that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're slowly getting there. And now this is just the, I think this is Adwada Dark theme from GTK 3. I don't even remember. I said it a long time ago. But yeah, so that's roughly where we're going. The plugins window right now looks like crap. I should show you all the new one from GTK 3, or from GTK 4, but that gets kind of difficult. But yeah, there's a lot going on here. A lot of stuff happening in the background. But yeah, so there's demo protocol plugin. Yes, my usernames are so excellent because they don't matter for either of these protocols. But yeah, so that's Pidgin 3 looks like at the moment. There's still 2 more widgets in here you can't see in the contact list window we have to deal with. One of them is the one that shows you notifications like so-and-so wants to add you to or wants to add you as a contact. And then there's the, you've been disconnected, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. Actually, I think those 2 are in the same. Yeah, the other one I'm thinking of is the email notifications, which we killed because we can't think of a single protocol that has email support. But yeah, so we're slowly whittling this down and we're getting there. So, all right, so back over here. All right, so that was the demo. Again, if anybody has any questions at any point, you can type !ask and then your question, and we will get to it when we're done with the presentation, which we are almost done with because I've been talking for an hour and I'm losing my voice. Oh, okay. Or we're going to do questions now. Sorry. So, do the questions. I need to go and hit this. And then this. And then. Okay. I know it says you're in question 3, but I'm only seeing 2. All right. So. The Captain Tucker asked, if one was looking at developing a plugin for Pidgin, should they be building around the current 2.x release or start building towards 3.0? This is a tricky question. So the Pidgin 2 and Pidgin 3 APIs are vastly, vastly different. So the question I have to you is, when are you trying to use your plugin? We do not currently have a compatibility layer between Pidgin 2 and Pidgin 3. We started trying to do one, but then trying to maintain it just became a pain in the butt, so we stopped. There is an idea, if somebody wants to take it on, that I kind of proof of concept, but it needs a lot more work. And that is to write a G-plugin loader. G-plugin is the plugin system we have in Pidgin 3. But the idea is to have a G-plugin loader that can load a Pidgin 2 plugin and translate everything into the Pidgin 3 API. That is difficult for a number of reasons, and some things don't port well and blah, 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 but it should work for a lot of cases, just not some of the crazier edge cases. But if you're looking to use your plugin anytime soon, target Pidgin 2. If we get Pidgin 3 out this year, I will be very happy. If we don't, I won't be surprised. And I'm saying this in January. Okay. I would love to have an alpha out this year, but I've been saying that for a while too. But our big thing right now is getting to GTK 4. And that's going to change a lot of stuff and cause a lot of stuff to get moved around. So unless you're actively going to be like keeping up on development and stuff like that, just target Pidgin 2. The differences between 2 and 3 are huge, but they're really not a whole lot from a plugin point of view. It really depends on how big your plugin is. If you're building a protocol plugin, it's very different. But it's not insurmountable. It's basically just the way you interface with things that changed. But like your actual functions that do the work, those are all the same right now. There will be some change there. I'm not sure exactly what though, because we haven't gone back to that yet. So it's been a while. So yeah. All right. Next up. Any plans for new challenges like WebAssembly, front-end technologies, Microsoft.NET World? For Pidgin, not specifically. We were working on a C# or a mono loader for G plugin. But now that mono's, I don't want to say dead, but now that the future is just .NET Core or whatever, that option's still on the table, but it's probably not going to come from me because I'm not going to be able to find the time to do it. When it comes to the other stuff like WebAssembly, I mean, if somebody wants to build a WebAssembly progressive web app or something that's based on libpurple, by all means they can. Like, I'm not going to stop them, but I'm not going to do it. And for front end stuff doesn't really affect us much. Pidgin always has been and always will be the GTK front end to libpurple. Don't forget, we also have Finch, which is the command line version. And you know, if somebody wants to build a web-based version off of libpurple, I mean, it's open source. Go for it. So yeah. So all right, next question. If you have a question that you really want me to ask on stream or answer on stream, you need to type !ask and then your question. All right, so next up, Paranoid Polaroid, nice name, asks, why not merge conversation buddy list in a clever way? What do you mean in a clever way? We just talked about the whole thing. I don't know what you mean by a clever way. It feels like our option is clever, but you didn't give me anything to work with, so I have no idea what you're asking. So, yeah. So, if you want to add a new question to kind of clarify that, feel free. Yeah. So, all right. So if anybody else has any other questions, I'll give you a few seconds here to go ahead and ask them. Otherwise, we're gonna get wrapped up here. Yeah. So, like I was saying, the next State of the Bird is tentatively scheduled for April 4th. It'll probably be the 11th, but we'll see what happens. I was trying to make sure it didn't interfere with Easter or anything this year. And Easter is the 22nd, I think. So we should be fine. But yeah. So, all right. Well, looks like we're not going to get any other questions. So, we are going to wrap this up. Oh, okay. We got one more question, of course. And it hasn't showed up in the queue yet. Come on. I can't hit the button until it shows it. You're killing me. Come on. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I can still answer it, even though I can't show it on screen yet, but I'll show it on screen as soon as I can. So the question is, so Ryuk has asked, I think I'm saying your name right. If not, let me know. Wrong button. Ryuk, let's go with that. Asked, do I still believe GTK is the way to go for UI? Depends. What's your goal, right? For Pidgin, as I just said, Pidgin always has been and always will be the GTK UI to libpurple. Finch has always been and will always be the end cursor's front end to libpurple. if somebody wants to write something in another, so we've had a number of projects to create libpurple UIs in other languages or for other desktop environments. There was a project called Vulture that was a Win32 API front end to libpurple. Let me back up here. So a lot of people think Pidgin is just this big this big monolithic project. It's not. Pidgin is comprised of two pieces itself, right? Not counting GTK. So Pidgin is just a UI. If you look at our code right now, I want to say it's like 80,000 lines of code is Pidgin. And you're probably going, how do you talk to all these different IM networks with 80,000 lines of code? And the answer is Pidgin doesn't. Pidgin talks the libpurple API. So Pidgin is comprised of libpurple, which abstracts out all of the different IM networks, as well as the user interface. And then Pidgin just talks to libpurple and says, hey, what kind of accounts can I create? And then it creates a drop-down list in the account manager or in the account editor for what protocols you can support, right? libpurple is doing all that work in the backend. So if somebody wanted to create a multi-protocol instant message client right now, they could start from scratch, sure, or they could use libpurple and use that to do everything, right? So like if you wanted to create something in Flutter, for example, Flutter is getting a lot of popularity right now. Ubuntu's putting in a lot of time and money into Flutter, right? You could write an IM client from scratch in Flutter and Dart, sure. Or you could figure out the Dart FFI bindings for C and use libpurple from Flutter. And then all you're doing is, or from Dart, and then all you're doing is building the UI in Flutter, and that's all you need to do. So the whole well, why are you still using GTK in 2022? Number one, people still like GTK. People still use it. There's a reason GNOME is the default desktop on many distros, right? Just because you don't like it doesn't mean other people don't like it too, right? So like GTK will be the UI I continue to work on. If somebody wants to build a libpurple UI and something else, I don't care. And libpurple is LGPL or GPL. I got to double check. I don't remember. I know we talked about moving to LGPL, but I think it's still GPL. It's GPL open source software. If you want to build a UI, fine. Just follow the license, right? Like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, if people want to build an Electron-based interface, knock yourself out. But I don't want to support you. I will support you, but not, like, I'm not going to, like, when you have questions about libpurple, sure. But, like, I'm not going to be like, oh, you should go use that because I'm still building Pidgin, right? But, like, there's a bunch of different ways to go about it, right? And, like, GTK, I'm still a fan of it. So I'm going to still use GTK. So, yeah. So, the mobile story, there's a comment in chat about Flutter would be cool because the mobile support for free. The mobile thing is another problem. I don't know that we've talked about this on the State of the Bird, but we'll tackle it real quick. You will never see a libpurple based client on the iOS App Store. And that's not my doing, that's Apple's doing. The reason for that is there is a clause in their terms or TOS or whatever for the store that says that they can be the only one that can distribute your software, or it's something along those lines. I don't remember exactly. It's been a long time since I read it. Some people looked it up recently and it's still there. I don't remember the wording because I don't care, because I don't need to know the specifics, right? But the problem is, and people are like, oh, well, there's other GPL software in the iOS App Store. And yes, you are correct. Now, what has happened with those other projects is those projects and the license, or the owners of that software, the copyright holders who have licensed their code under that license, have granted an exception to their license so that it can be used on the iOS App Store. The problem we have is that in our 24-year history, we didn't collect everybody's emails addresses, and even if we did, they wouldn't be up to date. Or let me back up. So for us to grant an exception, we have to get every contributor to the project to agree to that exception. Okay? That's non-negotiable. That is the deal. So on top of that, over the 24 years, we have not gotten contact info, and we definitely do not have up-to-date contact info for our 600 contributors. More importantly than that, some of our contributors, I'm sure, have passed on, right? So we can't get them to grant an exception because they're dead. Or if that's not good enough for you, one of our copyright holders on our code is Sun Microsystems. Sun Microsystems got bought by Oracle. Did Oracle purchase their copyrighted work or contributions into our code base? I don't know. And good luck proving that, right? Because you have to prove that in a court of law, or you have to be able to prove that in a court of law, right? So all of that, there's nothing we can do to get Lit Purple into the iOS App Store. Now, that said, Apple can change their terms, right? Except they probably won't. So like the whole lawsuit with Epic, with the Epic Game Store, I was rooting for Epic. Because if Epic is going to have their App Store on iOS, guess what has to change? The terms of the iOS App Store that says you can't have this in this app, or you can only be distributed from this App Store, would have to change so that people could put their apps in both app stores. When that term changes, now it's no longer conflicting with the GPL, therefore we would then be able to do it. However, that didn't happen. So, can it happen? Maybe. But there's nothing that we can do to change it, right? That rule has to change. There's no way we can work around that rule. The only way that a Lit Purple based client will ever end up on iOS is if that rule gets changed. And likewise, if I find somebody's using a client on there, I have to pull it. I have to tell them to pull it because it doesn't meet the terms of service for the iOS App Store because we did not grant that exception, right? That's just the way it goes. So, yeah. When it comes to side loading, sure, side loading's fine, but that's not in the App Store, right? Like I specifically said in the App Store. I didn't say not on an iOS device. I said it's not on the iOS App Store. But that said, adding instructions for people on how to sideload something is a pain in the butt, and it's a support nightmare. And we do not have the resources to manage it right now. So we'll see. We'll see. Would sideload open the door for the Epic App Store? I don't know. I mean, Android, you've been able to do this for a long time with the Amazon App Store. And how many of you still use the Amazon App Store on Android? I'm going to guess probably none of you. It was really cool when it first came out because there was stuff that was exclusive to it. And they used to give free apps away and stuff like that. But now nobody cares, right? Nobody cares at all. The biggest thing right now is people will use F-Droid on Android, and okay, right? But like the amount of people that have F-Droid or the Android or the Amazon App Store installed on their device is minuscule compared to the amount of users with those devices, right? So we'd be biting off a ton of work and support overhead for a very minimal return, right? There's just the ROI on that is just bad. And I'm not trying to sound like a business term, but like we have to manage our resources, right? And the cost of us supporting a sideloaded version on an iOS device, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. If somebody else wants to go do it, go knock yourself out, right? But I'm not going to cut into my resources to work on Pidgin 3 to support a niche environment, right? Now, that said, if somebody wants to pay me a bunch of money to do it, I'll consider it, right? But yeah. So, all right. With that, if there's no other questions, which I think there aren't, we're going to get out of here. So, excuse me. So thank you everybody for coming by. Remember, the next Day of the Bird is tentatively scheduled for April 4th. Be sure to follow our blog on Pidgin.im. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Discord. We have a subreddit even. I really need a trigger for this, or a bot command for this, and I don't have it. But yeah, so you can follow us in all those places, or you can even find us on IRC. We're on OFTC. We're on Libera, or Libera is our primary chat. We also have a presence on OFTC, and we still have somewhat of a presence on Freenode because people still show up there. But yeah, we're all over the place. So, be sure to check us out. And yeah, so thank you everybody for coming by. And until next time, adios. Oh, I forgot to hit the thing. All right, see you all later. Have a good one.